Welcome to the first episode of Gelosophy. I am so excited that I decided to do this, and it's going to be a good look into my life. It's going to be a good look into imposter syndrome, my stuttering story, everything that is just more personal when it comes to me, so you guys can get to know me a little bit better. And I know that like personal stories go together a little bit nicer. So today I actually wanted to start with this affirmation card that I got from Jam Gamble. And if you're wondering what that is Chester Buns. He's in here as well. And that is him chewing on this card. But he agrees that my story is worth sharing. And thank you, Jam Gamble, for these beautiful affirmation cards. I was actually like shuffling through them today, and I found that one, and I was like, that is perfect for what I want to talk about. So today I want to talk about my stuttering story. And it might be easy for you to hear me talking right now and think, what stutter? Like, what speech impediment? I had somebody actually say to me a couple of weeks ago, she was like, what speech impediment? And she's technically like my sister-in-law, but like she's dating my boyfriend's brother. So she was like, I didn't even know that you had a speech impediment. And I guess I'll just start off by saying it's an invisible disability, and I've stuttered my entire life. So if I look back on videos of myself, I can hear like the stutter, like the more like elongated. Actually, I'll talk a little bit about like what it is. Often call it a speech impediment because it's a cruel thing that like stuttering is such a hard word to say for people who stutter. So I usually call it a speech impediment. What it is like a repetition of sounds, or like there's something in my brain where like my words and my voice, like it doesn't match up. So I struggle to get out words. I have prolonged block. I've developed like a coping mechanism to get the word out, and it's kind of like a clicking sound. And as I go through therapy, like speech therapy, and as I work on it more, I'm getting better. But it's kind of like a defensive way because my body doesn't want to just like block on a word. I want to be able to speak. And I think I've also been conditioned to, when I stop talking, people either interrupt me or they'll be like, what were you trying to say? So I've like developed this coping in terms of like making a sound so at least somebody knows that I'm going to be talking, but it's still like, it's obviously not an ideal scenario. And like I said, I started stuttering when I was a kid. I always used to tell myself it will get better at a certain age. I used to tell myself that when you're 15, you won't have a stutter anymore. When you're 20, you won't have a stutter anymore. It grew into something that I was very private about, and that I literally wouldn't tell anybody that I was struggling with. But from the day that I can remember, it's always been at the forefront of my mind. It is the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning, and the last thing I think of when I go to sleep. And it's not because I'm narcissistic and I'm obsessed with myself. It's because I genuinely worry about it affecting everything around me. And before going to therapy and before really doing any of that stuff, I didn't really understand that it was like self-worth issues, because I was just worried about how I was going to be perceived, if people were going to think I was stupid. So that caused me to really isolate myself. Like socially, I've had like the same friends all through my life. And so socially, not so much, but it's still like, I still got nervous about like going to parties. And one of the hardest things for me is introducing myself, because Jillian Perrick, I can say it no problem here, but if I were in front of a person and they were to be like, what's your name? I would definitely stutter on my name. And that's because automatic information for somebody who stutters, it's very hard for us to get out because we know that we should know this information. I don't know how many times when I was like a server at a restaurant or something, when somebody used to be like, oh, what's your name? And I would like stutter on my name, and they would be like, oh, did you forget your name? Or like how many times people have like laughed because they're uncomfortable when I try to introduce myself. And again, I went through a very dark time as a young adult because I was certain that this was the worst thing ever. I was embarrassing. I was so ashamed of it. And I'm still like working through that shame, but it's definitely something that has affected me my entire life. you wouldn't know that it bothers me this much. When I started my coaching business, I was like, oh, great, I can just be on my computer and be on Zoom or whatever and just do calls, and I'm going to be really successful that way. And then it was like, no, you have to network, you have to make connections, you have to do Instagram lives, you have to do all this stuff. And when I'm anxious, my speech impediment gets way worse. 27 in 2019, and that was the year when I started to go to therapy. I was thinking about it in the summer of 2018. I distinctly remember, because I was going to one of my friends' birthdays, and I have never had that much anxiety in my life because I was just so worried about how I was going to come across and if people were going to be embarrassed of me, like my friends. Fun fact is actually like my stuttering, my anxiety is worse when I'm around like my friends, my family, and my boyfriend, because like I don't want to embarrass them and I don't want to like be embarrassed in front of them. So I actually enjoy doing things alone. Or I used to crave it more because like then I don't have to worry about embarrassing myself in front of anyone I love. And I learned that through therapy and through coaching and stuff that like I was just worried that somebody wasn't going to love me anymore. What I realized with coaching is that networking and like getting to know people is really, really important. And that's when I started to do the work. I started to go to therapy. I started speech therapy again. I hired coaches for my business, which like turned into a lot of stuff around mindset. And I really realized how much my self-worth was put in the fact that I thought I was worth nothing because I stuttered. So I would try and control different aspects of my life. Like 2018, I got like really fit and I was like at the gym all the time, but I couldn't understand like why I didn't feel better about myself, even though I had like lost a bunch of weight. And my therapist was like, it's because you're like searching for your worth. I also used to think I was a narcissist because I used to be like, why doesn't anybody choose me for like stupid, irrational stuff? Like, why doesn't anybody want to choose me for anything? Why am I not important enough to people? These were all stories that I was telling myself that weren't actually true. And it was just because I had such a low negative perception of myself that your internal state is reflected in everybody and everything around you, your environment, everything. So how you feel on the inside is going to affect everything in your life, and you're going to make something mean something about you if you're always consumed with your own problem. I'm not a narcissist. I just like had a really low self-worth issues, and once I started working through it and once I started like coaching myself through it and like really working on that stuff, it's also when I started my niche of imposter syndrome, and working through that was amazing as well. So it was really like a personal development journey that I went on, and now I am happy to report that I do things even though it still scares me. So for example, I was in a meeting at my full-time job and we were in like a big boardroom. I work for a really professional organization and it makes me nervous. So being around people in authority really makes me nervous because I worry about like stuttering and seeming like unprofessional and then them having an opinion of me and then it affects my job, even though none of that will actually happen. But that's how the brain works. So I got really nervous the other day, just like sitting in even through all the work that I've done. And then I started with the positive self-talk. When it used to be negative self-talk, I started with the positive self-talk and was like, you are so safe, you're so secure, everyone around here supports you, you can take your time, you can breathe. And it just goes to show like how much work goes into actually having those thoughts. So now so I was just looking for a car with my dad, and I was really nervous beforehand because I was like worried about having to like introduce myself to the sales guy. On the way there, I just took deep breaths and I was like, everybody's here to support you, your parents love you, you're fine. And it was fine. It was totally fine. I find that having the compassion for myself has been a really big thing. I don't even think I would call this my stuttering journey. I would just say it was my like self-worth journey, but it's obviously all tied to my speech impediment. 1 million people in the world stutter. And I know that that seems like a big number, but it's really only like 1% of the population. And it is an invisible disability. And like people have tried to like push me in terms of what I'm comfortable with. They've tried to like make me do presentations and stuff. And I used to really have like an internal battle because like I was like, should I just be pushing myself and just pushing through it? And then on the flip side, it's like sometimes I don't get treated like I have an actual disability. I go back and forth on some days, like when it comes to like answering the phone or something at work, it's like something that's hard for me to do. I just have to gauge how I'm feeling that day and figure out if I should be upset about the fact that I'm not being advocated for, or if I really need to push myself. Because I am somebody who, like, I take too much responsibility for myself and like how I'm perceived. So I'm always looking to improve myself. But at the same time, I don't want someone to just discount the fact that it is an invisible disability. It is something that affects me on a day-to-day basis. Like, I can't go through a drive-through without thinking like, oh, hopefully I'm going to be able to like say my order, or I have to like breathe and really think about how I'm talking. Social things are just another like stress on top of it, because I have to think about going in and talking to people and introducing myself, because I'm afraid of that initial weird look on their face of being like, what's going on here? I'm not responsible for anybody's feelings, just like they're not responsible for mine. So in really working on myself and working on how I feel about myself, it's made a world of difference for interacting with other people. There's still times where like certain people I'll get kind of like flustered around, or I'll worry what they think of me. But at the end of the day, I can only advocate for myself, one. And that's something that has really helped for me, as well as advocating for myself and really like speaking up for myself, because for 26 years, I pretended like it didn't bother me, even though it was all going on in my head, even though I was living inside my head, like living my own personal hell, basically, like always so anxious, always so worried, really low self-worth. It would make me people please really bad and act out in stupid ways. And like, it really affected my mental and emotional health. And when I went to therapy is when everything started to change. So that's a little bit about my stuttering story. I know that it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal when I'm talking on camera, but the brain is a funny thing, and they still don't have a lot of research on stuttering and like what actually causes it. I do know that there are certain times where like I'm so fluent and everything's great, and there are times where like I can't get a sentence out without like stuttering or like stammering on a word. It really just depends, but I know that I'm capable and competent and knowledgeable without having a perfect fluent speaking voice or whatever. I know that I am capable, and I know that I can do anything I want to. I just have to be able to get out of my own way. And that is the message that I wanted to leave with you today. And thank you so much for watching my first Gelosophy. I will definitely be wearing my pink fluffy robe when another video comes out. But again, I'm wearing my link in bio shirt from Melanie Aubert's shop. You should go get one because they're super cute and they're really comfy. So thank you guys so much for watching the first Gelosophy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, any support if you deal with an invisible disability or stuttering or a speech impediment, or you have somebody in your life who does as well. I love hearing your stories and I love hearing from you. So make sure you hit the like button and make sure you let me know in the comments.